Rain hammered the chapel roof like 1,000 angry fists. I stood at the front of the room staring at my son's casket and watched a room full of liars pretend to grieve. Daniel had been 40 years old, an engineer like me, a good man who believed in trust and fairness and all those other concepts that get you ground into paste by people who don't. The pews were half empty. Most of his old friends had drifted away during the bankruptcy. The ones who remained looked uncomfortable, like they'd shown up out of obligation rather than love. I didn't blame them. Watching a man fall apart is never pleasant. Maggie stood beside me, her hand in mine. She'd been crying since morning, but her tears were genuine. 67 years old, and she still believed in the goodness of people. I'd lost that faith somewhere between my son's wedding and his funeral. The minister was saying something about hope and eternal rest. I wasn't listening. I was watching the door because I knew she'd come. The doors opened at exactly 2:15. The wind caught them, slamming them against the walls. Rain swept into the chapel. And there she was. Melissa, black silk dress, perfect makeup, hair styled like she'd just stepped out of a salon. She moved down the aisle with the confidence of someone who thought she had every right to be there. Behind her, Connor and Eliza, my grandchildren, 20 and 17. Connor in a borrowed suit that didn't fit right. Eliza with mascara already running down her face. Melissa's eyes found mine. She smiled, not warm, not sad, just calculating. Then her gaze shifted to the woman standing on my other side. Rachel Moore. The smile vanished. Melissa's face went white. She actually stumbled, catching herself on the end of a pew. Rachel didn't move, didn't smile. Just watched Melissa, with the same cold expression she'd worn when she was still a detective. "Thomas," Maggie whispered. "What's she doing here?" "Paying respects," I said. But that wasn't true. Rachel was here because I'd asked her to be, because I'd known Melissa would show up, and I'd wanted her to see exactly who was standing beside me. Melissa recovered quickly. She always did. She made her way to the front, knelt before the casket, and performed what I can only describe as theater. Her shoulders shook. She pressed a hand to her mouth. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she stood, turned to me, and said the words I'd been expecting. "We need to talk about Daniel's estate." The chapel went silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. "Now?" Maggie's voice cracked. "Here?" "I'm still his wife," Melissa said. Her tone was steady now, all business. "I have rights." "You divorced him 7 years ago," I said. "The paperwork was never finalized." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. A lie. I knew it was a lie. But I also knew she'd come prepared with documentation. Forged, probably, but documentation nonetheless. "This isn't the place," Rachel said quietly. Melissa looked at her, really looked at her. Something passed between them. Some shared history I didn't fully understand yet. "Who are you?" Melissa asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly who Rachel was. "A friend of the family." "You weren't at the wedding?" "No," Rachel said. "I wasn't." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. People in the pews were starting to whisper. Connor looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I took a breath, made myself smile. It felt like cracking ice. "You want to discuss the estate?" I said. "Fine. You'll have a formal response in 48 hours through my attorney." "Thomas." 48 hours, Melissa. That's more courtesy than you showed my son." Her jaw tightened, but she nodded, stepped back, took her children and left the chapel the same way she'd entered. The doors closed. The rain returned to its rhythm. Maggie squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "What are you planning?" she whispered. "Justice," I said. Rachel looked at me. Something like approval flickered in her eyes. The minister cleared his throat and continued the service. I stood there, holding my wife's hand, and began to build. The house felt too big without Daniel. It had been 3 months since he'd passed, quietly, alone in a hospital bed, staring at a ceiling that offered no answers. Heart failure, the doctor said. But I knew better. You can't measure the kind of damage Melissa had done on an EKG. Maggie made tea. She always made tea when she was upset. The kitchen smelled like chamomile and rain. She left him when he had nothing, Maggie said. She took the kids, the house, everything she could carry. And now she wants what he left you? $30 million tends to bring people back from the grave, I said. The money had come from patent royalties. Daniel had designed a bridge reinforcement system 20 years ago. It had taken 2 decades for the industry to catch up to his thinking. By the time he'd gone bankrupt, the patents had been transferred to me for safekeeping. By the time he'd passed, they'd made both of us wealthy. Melissa had known nothing about the patents when she'd left. She'd seen only debt and failure. Now she saw zeros in a bank account and suddenly remembered she'd loved him. Rachel arrived at 7. She didn't knock, just let herself in through the back door. Old habit from her years in law enforcement. She laid a manila folder on the kitchen table. "Everything you asked for," she said. I opened it. Inside were documents I'd only heard rumors about. Corporate emails, bank statements, legal memos. "Where did you get these?" Maggie asked. "I used to work fraud investigation," Rachel said. "You'd be surprised what people forget to delete." The documents told a story. 6 months before Melissa had left Daniel, she'd been in contact with one of his business partners, a man named Victor Brennan. They'd discussed the bridge patents. Specifically, they'd discussed how to transfer ownership before the divorce. Daniel had discovered the plan. That's why the bankruptcy had accelerated. He'd pulled the patents, moved them to me, and cut Brennan loose. It had cost him everything: his company, his reputation, his marriage. But he'd protected the patents. "She tried to rob him before she left," I said. "Yes," Rachel said, "and you have proof. Authenticated emails, notarized statements from Brennan's assistant, legal memos from Melissa's attorney advising her to drop the IP claim because the transfer to you was ironclad." I looked at the documents for a long time. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley like a promise. "Thomas," Maggie said carefully, "what are you going to do with this?" "Build a case," I said. "For what?" "For everything she took from him." Maggie's hand trembled as she set down her teacup. "I don't like what I'm seeing in your eyes." "I'm not going to hurt anyone," I said. "I'm going to use the law, the system, the same tools she tried to use against Daniel." "That's not what worries me," Maggie said. "What worries me is that you're starting to enjoy this." She wasn't wrong. There was a satisfaction in planning, in laying out each move like pieces on a chessboard. I'd spent 40 years building bridges. Now I was building something else. Rachel cleared her throat. "There's one more thing. Melissa filed a lawsuit yesterday. She's claiming you manipulated Daniel's will, claiming undue influence." "On what evidence?" "Affidavits from Connor and Eliza, both stating you pressured their father into transferring his assets before he passed." The words hit like a physical blow, not because they were true, because my grandchildren had signed them. Maggie made a sound like something breaking. "She made them do it," I said. "Probably," Rachel agreed. "But their signatures are real, and in court, that matters." I closed the folder, stood, walked to the window and watched the rain streak down the glass. "Call Alex Whitaker," I said. "Tell him I need to see him first thing tomorrow, and tell him to clear his schedule for the next month." "Thomas?" "She brought the kids into this," I said. "She made this a war, so we're going to finish it." Rachel nodded. She understood. She'd seen enough courtroom battles to know when someone had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. After she left, Maggie stood beside me at the window. "Promise me you won't lose yourself in this," she said. "I promise." But we both knew I was lying. Alex Whitaker's office sat on the 14th floor of a downtown building that smelled like old money and furniture polish. He'd been my attorney for 30 years. He'd handled my patents, my contracts, my estate planning. He was good at his job precisely because he never let emotion cloud his judgment. He read through Rachel's documents with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining X-rays. "It's solid," he said finally. "The emails are authenticated. The timestamps match. Brennan's assistant's statement is notarized and specific. If this goes to court, it'll destroy Melissa's credibility. Will it stop her lawsuit? It should, but she's claiming your son was mentally compromised when he transferred the patents. She's arguing the transfer itself was fraudulent. Daniel was sound of mind. We have medical records proving it. She'll bring experts who'll say depression constitutes mental incapacity. She'll paint him as vulnerable and you as predatory." Alex leaned back in his chair. "These cases get ugly. She'll drag your son's memory through court. She'll make the jury see him as a victim and you as the villain. Then we make sure it never gets to court." "How?" "By making her lawsuit too expensive to pursue." I laid out my plan. Alex listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That's aggressive," he said. "Is it legal?" "Technically, yes, but it's going to feel personal. The judge might see it as retaliation." "Let them. Every move I make will be within the law. Every document will be legitimate. If she wants to fight, we'll fight, but we'll fight smart." Alex nodded slowly. "I'll draft the response. But Thomas, be sure you want this. Once we start, there's no walking it back." "I'm sure." We worked through the afternoon. Alex pulled up Daniel's original trust documents, the patent transfer agreements, the divorce settlement. Everything was in order. Everything was legal. At 4 o'clock, his assistant brought in another file. "This just arrived," she said. "Courier delivery." Alex opened it. His expression went flat. "What?" I asked. "Melissa's attorney just filed a motion for immediate injunction. They're trying to freeze your assets pending the outcome of the lawsuit." "Can they do that?" "They can try. Emergency hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning." He looked at me over his reading glasses. "She's moving fast. So will we." That evening, Rachel came to the house again. This time she brought someone with her. A woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes that missed nothing. "This is Margaret Price," Rachel said. "She's a forensic accountant. Used to work for the FBI." Margaret shook my hand. Her grip was firm. "Rachel says you need someone to follow money trails," she said. "Can you?" "If it exists, I can find it. Question is, what am I looking for?" "Melissa Grant's finances for the last 7 years. Where her money comes from, where it goes, any irregularities." Margaret smiled. "You think she's hiding something?" "I know she is. I just need to know what." She sat down at the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and went to work. Within an hour, she had access to public records, credit reports, property filings. "Interesting," she said. "Ms. Grant has been living well beyond her declared income. She filed bankruptcy 3 years ago, but she's currently leasing a property in the city for $8,000 a month. How's she paying for it?" "That's the question." Margaret's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I'm seeing loans from private lenders, high interest, the kind people take when banks won't touch them." "Who's backing the loans?" "Working on it." Maggie brought coffee. She set it down without speaking, then left the room. I knew what she was thinking, that I was becoming obsessed, that this was consuming me. She was right, but I couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. By midnight, Margaret had traced the loans. They led to a holding company. The holding company led to Shell Corporation. The Shell Corporation led to a name I recognized, Victor Brennan. "She's been borrowing from him," Margaret said, "for years. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why would he keep lending to her? Either he's spectacularly bad at business, Margaret said, or he's expecting a payoff. Rachel leaned over the laptop. Like $30 million in patent royalties. The pieces clicked into place. Melissa hadn't come back just for the money. She'd come back because she owed money. Brennan had been funding her lifestyle, waiting for his investment to pay off. They're still working together, I said. Looks that way, Margaret agreed. I stood, walked to the window. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still dark. Can we prove it? In court? Maybe. The financial ties are documented, but proving conspiracy is harder. We'd need communications, something showing they coordinated this lawsuit. Then we find it, I said. Rachel and Margaret exchanged looks. That might require methods that aren't strictly by the book, Rachel said carefully. I don't care about the book anymore, I said. I care about the truth. The emergency hearing took place in a gray courtroom that smelled like floor wax and broken promises. Judge Patricia Hendricks presided. She had a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency and zero tolerance for games. Melissa sat with her attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Robert Carlyle. He had the look of someone who billed by the minute and enjoyed every second of it. Alex presented our case first. He was methodical, laying out the timeline of the patent transfers, the legitimacy of Daniel's trust, the clear documentation showing everything had been done properly. Carlyle responded with emotion. He painted Daniel as a broken man, manipulated by a controlling father. He presented the affidavits from Connor and Eliza, their words describing how I'd isolated their father, convinced him to sign away his rights. It was fiction, but it was compelling fiction. Judge Hendricks listened impassively. When Carlyle finished, she looked at Alex. Do you have a response to the grandchildren's statements? We do, Your Honor. Alex stood and presented our counter documents. Medical evaluations showing Daniel had been mentally sound. Testimony from Daniel's doctors stating he'd been clear-headed and decisive. And then, the piece de resistance, the divorce settlement. 7 years ago, Alex said, Melissa Grant signed a complete waiver of all future claims to Daniel Reed's assets. This was part of their divorce agreement. She received the house, the vehicles, and sole custody of the children. In exchange, she relinquished any claim to his intellectual property, future earnings, or estate. He handed copies to the judge and to Carlyle. The waiver is notarized and filed with the county. It's legally binding. Carlyle's face went rigid. He whispered something to Melissa. She shook her head, whispering back urgently. Your Honor, Carlyle said, we were not aware of this document. That's surprising, Alex said, considering your client signed it. Judge Hendricks read through the waiver. When she looked up, her expression was neutral, but I caught a flicker of annoyance. Ms. Grant, she said, did you sign this document? Melissa stood. I did, Your Honor. But I was coerced. My attorney at the time advised me that if I didn't sign, I'd lose custody of my children. Do you have evidence of this coercion? I have testimony from my attorney. Written testimony. He's prepared to testify in person. Judge Hendricks set down the papers. Here's what's going to happen. I'm denying the motion for an asset freeze. The documentation presented by Mr. Reed's counsel demonstrates clear legal transfer of the disputed assets. However, I'm not dismissing Ms. Grant's lawsuit. She has the right to present her case in full. We'll schedule a preliminary hearing for 3 weeks from now. Both parties will have time to gather additional evidence. The gavel came down. Case dismissed for now, but not over. Outside the courthouse, rain had started again. Melissa stood under the overhang, surrounded by Carlyle and 2 associates. When she saw me, she broke away from them. This isn't over, she said. No, I agreed. It's not. You think you can buy justice. You think money makes you right. I think documentation makes me right. I think the law makes me right. And I think your signature on a legal waiver makes me right. She stepped closer. You took everything from him. You controlled him his entire life. He couldn't make a decision without your approval. I loved my son, I said quietly. I tried to protect him from people who'd hurt him. I failed at that. But I won't fail at protecting what he left behind. Those patents should have been mine. They were never yours. They were his work, his genius. You wanted the money without the struggle. That's not how it works. Her hand came up. For a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. But then Rachel appeared beside me, materializing out of the crowd like a ghost. Melissa's hand dropped. The fear was back in her eyes. You, she said. What are you to him? A friend, Rachel said, and a witness. To what? To this conversation, which, by the way, is being recorded. Rachel tapped her jacket pocket. Oregon is a one-party consent state. Everything you just said is admissible. Melissa's face went pale. She looked from Rachel to me, then back to Rachel. You planned this. No, I said. You planned this when you decided to come after my son's estate. I'm just responding. Carlyle appeared at her elbow. Melissa, we should go. She let him guide her away, but before she left, she looked back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Hatred, yes, but also something else. Desperation. Rachel and I stood in the rain, watching them leave. That was probably too aggressive, she said. Probably, I agreed. Feel good? No, but it felt necessary. We walked to Alex's car. He was waiting by the driver's side, looking troubled. She's going to escalate, he said. This kind of public humiliation, it's going to make her dangerous. Let her escalate, I said. Every move she makes now, we'll be watching. Every mistake she makes, we'll document. And if she doesn't make mistakes? She will, Rachel said. Because she's desperate, and desperate people always slip. I looked back at the courthouse, watching Melissa's car pull away from the curb. She came to my son's funeral for money, I said. She signed legal papers against me using my grandchildren as weapons. She made this personal. Now, she's going to learn what that means. Alex nodded slowly. Then, we'd better be ready for war. We are, I said. We've been ready since the moment she walked through those chapel doors. The letter arrived 3 days later. Hand-delivered to my house, no return address, just my name written in elegant script on the envelope. Maggie brought it to me in the study. This was just dropped off. A courier. I opened it. Inside was a single card with embossed lettering. Thomas, we should talk, not as adversaries, but as family, for Connor and Eliza's sake. Please. Melissa. What is it? Maggie asked. I handed her the card. She read it, then looked at me with troubled eyes. She's trying to manipulate you. Yes. You're not going to respond, are you? I am, but not the way she expects. I called Alex, then Rachel, then Margaret. By evening, we were all gathered in my study, planning our response. She wants to meet, I said. So we'll meet, but on our terms, not hers. What are you thinking? Alex asked. A formal reading, at your office, her attorney, Connor, Eliza, us, everything on the record. That's not what she's asking for. No, she's asking for a private conversation where she can work on my emotions, try to make me feel guilty about the grandchildren, plant seeds of doubt. I looked around the room. I'm offering her transparency instead. If she wants to talk about family, we'll talk about it in front of witnesses with documentation. Rachel nodded. It puts her in a position where refusing looks suspicious. Exactly. Margaret pulled up her laptop. I've got more on the Brennan connection. Want to hear it? Go ahead. He's been in contact with Melissa at least twice a week for the last 3 months. Phone records show dozens of calls, and I found something interesting in his financial records. He took out a large loan 6 weeks ago. $2 million. What for? Officially, business expansion, but the timing is suspicious. That's right around when Melissa would have learned about Daniel's inheritance. You think he fronted her legal fees? I think he's financing this entire operation. Carlisle doesn't come cheap. Neither do expert witnesses and forensic accountants. Someone's paying for all of it. Can we prove Brennan's involvement? Alex asked. Working on it. But if I can establish financial ties between Brennan and Melissa's legal fund, it opens up questions about motive and conspiracy. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights glittered like promises. Somewhere out there, Melissa was plotting her next move. Brennan was calculating his investment. My grandchildren were being used as weapons, and I was done being patient. Draft the invitation, I said to Alex. Formal, professional. Make it sound like we're trying to resolve this amicably, but include one line at the end. What line? Bring your conscience. You'll need it more than your attorney. Maggie inhaled sharply. Thomas. She wants to play on emotions, I said. Fine. Let's see how she handles having her own thrown back at her. Alex drafted the letter that night. We sent it by courier the next morning. By afternoon, we had a response. Melissa agreed to the meeting. It was scheduled for the following Friday. Alex's conference room. 10 in the morning. The week crawled by. Maggie grew quieter. She'd make dinner, clean the kitchen, then disappear into the bedroom with a book she never seemed to read. On Thursday night, she finally spoke what was on her mind. You've changed, she said. We were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. I know, I said. You used to build things. Now you're tearing someone apart. She tore Daniel apart first. That doesn't make this right. Maybe not, but it makes it necessary. She looked at me with eyes that had seen 50 years of my life. What happens when this is over? When you've won? What then? Then I'll have protected what my son left behind. Will you? Or will you have just destroyed what's left of this family? I didn't have an answer for that, because I didn't know. The next morning, I put on my best suit. Maggie helped me with my tie, her hands shaking slightly. Promise me something, she said. What? Promise me you'll remember why you're doing this. For Daniel, not for revenge. I promise. Another lie. Because at some point in the last few weeks, the line between justice and revenge had blurred. Maybe they'd always been the same thing. Maybe the only difference was which side you stood on. Rachel picked me up at 9:30. We drove to Alex's office in silence. She was wearing a dark suit, her hair pulled back. She looked like she was heading to court, which, in a way, we were. The conference room was on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. Alex had arranged the seating carefully. One long table, 6 chairs on one side for us, 6 on the other for them, and in the middle of the table, no food, no coffee, just files. Stacks of them. Melissa arrived at precisely 10. Carlisle was with her. Connor and Eliza followed, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Melissa stopped when she saw the files. Her expression flickered. Confusion, then understanding, then anger. What is this? She asked. A formal discussion, Alex said. As you requested. I requested a private conversation. No, you requested a conversation about family. This is that conversation, with documentation. Carlisle whispered something to Melissa. She shook her head sharply. They sat. Connor wouldn't look at me. Eliza was crying before anyone said a word. I looked at my granddaughter and felt something crack inside my chest, but I didn't let it show. Thank you for coming, I said. Let's skip the pleasantries, Melissa said. What do you want? The truth, I said. Starting with why you signed affidavits, claiming I manipulated your father. I looked at Connor. He finally met my eyes. There was shame there, and fear. Answer him, Melissa said. Mom told us, Connor started. Don't, I said gently. Don't lie anymore. Not here, not to me. His face crumpled. I'm sorry. She said, if we didn't sign, we'd lose everything. She said you'd take it all and we'd have nothing. And you believed her. She's our mom. And he was your grandfather, Maggie said quietly. She'd been silent until now. He loved you, both of you. He would never have left you with nothing. Eliza sobbed. I didn't want to sign it, but Mom said, Enough, Melissa snapped. Thomas, let's talk about the real issue. The money. All right, I said. Let's talk about it. I nodded to Alex. He opened the first file. 7 years ago, Alex said, you signed a complete waiver of all claims to Daniel Reed's assets, intellectual property, and future earnings. Do you deny this? I was coerced. By whom? My attorney at the time. We've spoken to your attorney. He denies this. In fact, he provided us with his contemporaneous notes from your meetings. Would you like to hear them? Melissa's jaw tightened. No. He advised you that the waiver was standard in divorce proceedings, where one party retains full custody. He advised you to take it. He said, and I quote, the patents are worthless. Take the house and move on. You agreed, you signed, no coercion, just bad judgment on your part about the value of your husband's work. That doesn't change the fact that Thomas manipulated Daniel. Rachel spoke for the first time. Actually, it does. Because if you knowingly gave up your claim 7 years ago, you can't now claim Daniel was manipulated into protecting those same assets. Either he was competent to transfer them to his father, or he was incompetent when he agreed to divorce you and give you custody. You can't have it both ways. The logic was airtight. Carlisle knew it. Melissa knew it, but she wasn't done fighting. There's still the matter of undue influence, Carlisle said. Even if the patents were legally transferred, if Thomas pressured his son. We have medical records, Alex interrupted. Psychiatric evaluations. Daniel Reed was examined by 3 different mental health professionals in the month before his passing. All 3 declared him sound of mind. All 3 documented that the patent transfer was his decision, made freely and with full understanding of its implications. Then why did he do it? Melissa demanded. Why give it all to Thomas? Because he knew you'd come back for it, I said. The room went silent. He knew, I continued, that the moment those patents started generating revenue, you'd remember you'd been married to him. He knew you'd twist the facts, manipulate the kids, and try to take what he'd worked for, so he protected it. Not from the world, from you. Melissa's hands were shaking. You have no right. I have every right. You want to know why Daniel transferred everything to me? Because you'd already tried to steal it once before. I nodded to Rachel. She laid a file on the table, the one she'd given me weeks ago, the authenticated emails, the memos, the proof of Melissa's conspiracy with Brennan. 6 months before you divorced my son, I said, you were planning to steal his intellectual property. You were working with Victor Brennan to transfer the patents before Daniel could protect them. My son found out. That's why his company collapsed. That's why he pulled the patents. To save them from you. Melissa stared at the documents. Her face had gone pale. These are private communications, Carlisle said weakly. These are evidence of fraud, Alex countered. Evidence that establishes motive and pattern of behavior. Evidence that will be submitted to the court in our counterclaim. Counterclaim? Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. For defamation, I said. For filing false affidavits. For attempting to defraud an estate. We're not just defending against your lawsuit anymore, Melissa. We're coming after you. Connor stood up abruptly. I can't do this. Sit down, Melissa hissed. No. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I didn't know. She told us you'd forced Dad to do it. She said you'd controlled him his whole life. She made it sound like you were the villain. I know, I said. I want out. I want to withdraw my affidavit. Whatever I need to do, I'll do it. Eliza stood too. Me too. I didn't want to do this from the start. Melissa's composure shattered. She looked around the table with wild eyes, seeing her case collapse in real time. You're all against me, she said. You've all been against me from the start. No, I said. We've been for the truth. That's not the same thing. Carlyle leaned over and whispered urgently to Melissa. She shook her head forcefully. He kept whispering. Finally, she sagged in her chair. What do you want? She asked quietly. Withdraw your lawsuit, I said. Publicly apologize for the affidavits, and never use the Reed name for any business or property claim again. And if I refuse, then we go to court. We present all of this evidence. We let a jury decide. And when we win, and we will win, you won't just lose the lawsuit, you'll lose your credibility, your reputation, potentially your freedom if the fraud charges stick. She sat there for a long moment, staring at the files on the table like they were snakes. Then she whispered something to Carlyle. He pulled out a notepad and began to write. The withdrawal of the lawsuit hit the legal news that afternoon. Melissa's attorney released a brief statement citing newly discovered evidence that had led his client to reconsider her position. It was corporate speak for surrender. But I knew it wasn't over, because the woman who'd walked into that conference room wasn't someone who accepted defeat gracefully. She was someone who regrouped, who found new angles, and I was right. 2 days later, Connor called me. His voice was shaking. Grandpa, you need to know something. Mom's not done. She's planning something. What kind of something? I don't know exactly, but she's been on the phone with Brennan constantly, and she mentioned something about public opinion, about making you look bad in the media. Let her try. There's more. She's been telling people you cut us off, that you won't help with my tuition, that you abandoned your grandkids. None of that's true. I know, but she's good at making people believe her. She's been posting on social media, making it seem like we're victims. I thanked Connor and hung up. Then I called Margaret. Can you monitor social media activity? I asked. Already on it. She's been active on 3 platforms. Subtle at first, just mentions of family difficulties, but it's escalating. She posted a picture of the kids at Daniel's grave this morning with a caption about carrying on despite abandonment. Send me everything. I want to see exactly what she's saying. The posts were masterful manipulation, nothing directly accusatory, just implications, suggestions, emotional images paired with vague language designed to generate sympathy. By evening, I had a plan. We're going public, I told Alex. Properly, controlled. Before she can build a narrative we have to fight against. What are you thinking? A press release, facts only, documenting the lawsuit, the withdrawal, the legitimate transfer of assets. No emotion, just data. That's risky. The media might twist it. They might, but staying silent is riskier. Right now, she's controlling the story. We need to change that. Rachel helped me draft the statement. It was clinical, precise. It laid out the timeline of the patent transfers, Daniel's will, Melissa's waiver, and her subsequent lawsuit. It noted the withdrawal of the case and the verified authenticity of all documentation. It ended with a single sentence. The Reed family requests privacy during this difficult time and asks that the memory of Daniel Reed be honored with truth rather than speculation. We released it through Alex's firm. By the next morning, it had been picked up by local news outlets. By afternoon, it had spread to legal blogs and industry publications. Melissa's social media went dark, but the silence didn't last long. On Friday, a story appeared in a local tabloid. Wealthy engineer abandons grandchildren over money dispute. The article painted me as a greedy old man using legal technicalities to rob my own family. It was filled with quotes from family friends and sources close to the situation. All anonymous. All devastating. I read it twice. Then I called Margaret. Can you trace where this came from? Give me an hour. she called back in 45 minutes. The reporter who wrote it has a history of working with PR firms that specialize in reputation management. I made some calls. Turns out, one of those firms was recently hired by someone matching Melissa's description. So she's paying for hit pieces. Looks that way. And if she's doing it once, she'll do it again. I hung up and stared at the article. It was clever. It didn't make any specific false claims I could sue over. It just arranged true facts in misleading ways, created an impression without saying anything actionable. She's fighting dirty, Maggie said. She'd been reading over my shoulder. Then we fight smart. I called Connor again. I need you to do something for me. Something that might upset your mother. What? I need you to tell your story, the real one. On the record. There was a long pause. You want me to go against her publicly? I want you to tell the truth. If you're not comfortable with that, I understand. But if we don't counter her narrative, it's going to get worse. Another pause. Then, okay, I'll do it. The next day, Connor gave an interview to a local reporter I'd carefully selected. Someone with a reputation for fact-checking and fairness. He talked about the affidavits, about being pressured to sign them, about discovering the truth of his father's decisions. The article ran on Sunday. By Monday morning, Melissa's phone was ringing off the hook with reporters asking for comment. She called me that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. You turned my son against me, her message said. Her voice was barely controlled fury. You couldn't just win. You had to destroy me. Fine. You want war? You've got it. I played the message for Rachel. She's escalating, Rachel said. Good. Good? People make mistakes when they're angry. They get sloppy. And she's got a lot to be sloppy about. Margaret came through again 3 days later. She'd been digging deeper into Brennan's finances, and she'd found something interesting. He's not just lending money to Melissa, she said. He's been shorting stocks in the companies that use Daniel's bridge technology, big positions. If those patents were tied up in legal disputes, those stocks would drop. He'd make millions. Financial motive, Alex said. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Can we prove it? The trades are documented. The timing is suspicious. If we can show coordination between Brennan and Melissa, we can make a case. What do we need? Communications. Proof they were working together. Emails, texts, recorded calls. Rachel cleared her throat. I might be able to help with that, but it would require methods that are legally gray. I looked at her. How gray? Let's just say if we were still in court, this evidence might not be admissible. But for building leverage, for convincing prosecutors to investigate, it would be useful. I thought about it. Thought about Melissa's voice on that message. Thought about Daniel's face in the hospital. Thought about everything that had been taken and twisted and weaponized. Do it, I said. Maggie stood abruptly. I can't listen to this. She left the room. I heard her footsteps going upstairs, the bedroom door closing. Your wife's right to be concerned, Alex said carefully. We're crossing lines here. The lines were crossed when Melissa used my grandchildren as weapons, I said. We're just standing on the other side now. Rachel nodded. She understood. Maybe she'd crossed too many lines in her career to see them clearly anymore. Or maybe she just believed, like I did, that some battles couldn't be won by staying inside the rules. She left that night with a plan. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know the specifics. Plausible deniability, she called it. I just wanted results. The results came faster than expected. Rachel called me at 6 a.m. I've got it. Recorded phone conversations between Melissa and Brennan. Dozens of them. They're explicit about the plan to tie up the patents in court so Brennan could profit from the market reaction. How explicit? In one call, Melissa says, once the lawsuit is public, you can start shorting the stocks. The uncertainty alone will tank them. In another, Brennan tells her, just keep the old man busy in court for 6 months. That's all I need to make this work. Where did you get these? Don't ask questions you don't want answered. She was right. I didn't. What do we do with them? I asked. First, we make copies, multiple copies stored in multiple locations. Then we give them to the district attorney. Let the professionals decide if charges are warranted. And if they don't pursue it? Then we leak them to the press, but carefully, through intermediaries. Nothing traceable back to us. I felt something twist in my chest. This was it, the point of no return. Once we released those recordings, Melissa wouldn't just lose the legal battle. She'd face criminal investigation, possible prosecution. Do it, I said. The recordings were delivered to the district attorney's office that afternoon. By evening, I got a call from a prosecutor named David Shaw. He wanted to meet. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Shaw was in his 40s with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many cases like this. Where did you get these recordings? He asked. From a private investigator working on my son's estate, I said. Technically true, if incomplete. How were they obtained? I don't know the technical details. He studied me for a moment. You understand these might not be admissible in court. I understand. But they're real, and they show criminal conspiracy. They show suspicious conversations. That's not the same thing as proof. So investigate. Look at Brennan's stock trades. Look at the timing. Look at Melissa's lawsuit filing dates. If the recordings are real, and they are, you'll find corroborating evidence. Shaw tapped his fingers on the table. Why bring this to me? Why not just use it as leverage to make them go away? Because my son is gone. Because my grandchildren were used as weapons. And because if I don't stop this now, they'll do it to someone else. It wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that I wanted them to suffer the way Daniel had suffered. But Shaw didn't need to know that. I'll look into it, he said. No promises, but I'll look. That was enough, for now. Word of the investigation leaked within days, probably from Shaw's office, probably intentionally, to put pressure on the targets. Melissa's phone started ringing with reporters asking about financial conspiracy. Brennan's law firm issued a statement denying all allegations. And then Melissa made her biggest mistake. She called a press conference. It was held on the courthouse steps. She stood there with Carlisle and a prepared statement, trying to control the narrative one more time. I have been victimized, she read, by a powerful man using wealth and connections to destroy my reputation. The allegations against me are false. The recordings are fabricated. This is nothing more than a cruel attempt to silence a widow seeking justice for her late husband. She'd rehearsed it, but she'd also underestimated the reporters. Is it true you tried to steal your husband's patents during your marriage? One asked. No. We have authenticated emails suggesting otherwise. Those emails are taken out of context. Did you sign a legal waiver giving up all claims to your husband's estate? I was coerced. By whom? By my attorney at the time. Your attorney denies this. He's provided contemporaneous notes documenting that you signed willingly. Her composure started to crack. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The Reed family has unlimited resources to manufacture evidence. The waiver is filed with the county. It's public record. How is that manufactured? She looked at Carlisle. He whispered something. She shook her head. Are you aware that your financial backer, Victor Brennan, has been shorting stocks in companies that use your late husband's technology? Another reporter asked. I don't know anything about Mr. Brennan's financial activities. But you've been in regular contact with him. Phone records show dozens of calls. He's a family friend. Who loaned you hundreds of thousands of dollars, at high interest. Expecting what kind of return? This press conference is over, Carlisle said. But Melissa kept talking. Fatal mistake. I loved my husband, she said, voice rising. I loved Daniel. And his father poisoned him against me. Made him believe I was the enemy. That's the real crime here. Not some made-up financial conspiracy. The crime is what Thomas Reed did to his own son. What did he do? He controlled him, manipulated him, made him choose between his father and his family. Is that why you left when your husband went bankrupt? The question hung in the air. Melissa's face went through several expressions at once: rage, fear, desperation. I left because I had to protect my children. From what? From poverty. It was honest. Maybe the first truly honest thing she'd said. But honesty wasn't helping her case. So you left your husband when he lost his money, came back when he was wealthy again, and now you're surprised his father doesn't want to give you the money? Carlyle physically pulled her away from the microphones, but the damage was done. The video went viral. By evening, it had been clipped and shared across every social media platform. The narrative had shifted. Melissa wasn't the wronged widow anymore. She was the gold digger who'd gotten caught. I watched the video 3 times. Each time, I felt a cold satisfaction that probably would have worried Maggie if she'd been in the room. She wasn't. She'd been spending more time at her sister's house. Giving me space, she said. But I knew the truth. She didn't want to watch what I was becoming. Connor called that night. Did you see it? I saw it. She's falling apart. She locked herself in her room. Won't talk to anyone. I'm sorry you have to see this. I'm not. I'm angry. At her. At myself for believing her. At all of it. His voice cracked. Did Dad really choose you over her? Is that what happened? No, I said. He didn't choose me. He chose honesty. He chose to protect what he'd built from people who'd abuse it. Your mother made it a choice. He just responded. I wish I'd known him better, before everything fell apart. He loved you. Both of you. That never changed. We talked for another hour. About Daniel, about mistakes and forgiveness, and how to move forward from wreckage. When we hung up, I felt something shift. Not redemption, not exactly. But a sense that maybe in saving the patents, I'd saved something else too. The next morning, Shaw called again. We're moving forward with the investigation, he said. The trading patterns match the timeline of the recordings. We're building a case. Against both of them? Against Brennan for securities fraud. Against your daughter-in-law for conspiracy and possibly perjury, depending on what else we find in her affidavits. How long? Months. Maybe a year. These things take time. I don't have a year. Then maybe you should have thought of that before starting a war. He wasn't wrong. But I'd come too far to stop now. The formal legal notices arrived 2 weeks later. The district attorney's office was officially pursuing charges. Brennan for securities fraud and market manipulation. Melissa for conspiracy to commit fraud and perjury. Both faced potential prison time. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Maggie came home that evening. She'd been gone for 3 days, staying with her sister. When she walked through the door, she looked older than I'd ever seen her. It's on the news, she said. They're showing her being escorted out of her office by investigators. I know. The kids are devastated. I know that too. She sat down across from me. Was it worth it? I don't know yet. Thomas. Her voice broke. You've destroyed her. Completely. She's going to lose everything. Her job, her reputation, possibly her freedom. The kids are going to lose their mother. She destroyed herself. I just documented it. That's not true, and you know it. You orchestrated this. You planned every move. You used your money and your connections and your anger to systematically take apart another human being. She tried to steal from my son. Twice. She used our grandchildren as weapons. I know what she did. Maggie's voice rose, something that almost never happened. I know exactly what she did. But what you've done is worse. Because you did it with full knowledge, with calculation. She was desperate and stupid. You were neither. You were just cruel. The word hit like a slap. Cruel. Yes, cruel. This isn't justice, Thomas. It's revenge. and it's changed you into someone I barely recognize." She stood up. "I'm going back to my sister's. I need time to think. About us. About whether I can stay married to someone who does this to people." "Maggie, don't. Don't tell me it was necessary. Don't tell me it was for Daniel. Because it wasn't. This was for you. For your anger. For your need to win." She walked to the door, then turned back. "I've loved you for 50 years, but I don't like what you've become." The door closed. I sat in the empty house and listened to the silence. Rachel came by the next day. She took one look at my face and knew. Maggie left. Temporarily, maybe permanently. I don't know. "I'm sorry." "Are you? You helped me do this." "Yes, because you asked me to, because I thought it was justified. But she's not wrong, Thomas. We crossed lines, a lot of them." "Would you do it again?" She thought about it. "Yes, but that doesn't make it right. It just makes us the kind of people who choose vengeance over virtue. Daniel deserved justice. Daniel deserved a father who could let him rest in peace. Instead, he got a father who turned his memory into a weapon. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because somewhere in the last few months, I'd stopped fighting for Daniel and started fighting for myself. The satisfaction of watching Melissa's world collapse. The thrill of each small victory. The cold pleasure of being right and making sure everyone knew it. It had consumed me. "What do I do now?" I asked. "You finish it," Rachel said. "One way or another. You either see this through to the end, or you walk away. But you can't stay in this middle ground where you're half warrior and half human. It's eating you alive." She left. I sat there for hours, thinking about her words. Finish it. But what did that mean? The legal case would drag on for months. Melissa was already destroyed. Brennan would face trial. The patents were safe. What more was there to finish? The answer came 3 days later. An email from Carlisle. My client would like to meet, privately, to discuss a settlement. I showed it to Alex. He shrugged. "It's a trap, or she's desperate. Probably both." "Should I go?" "Do you want to?" I thought about it. Thought about Maggie's words. Thought about the person I used to be before the funeral, before the rage. "Yes," I said. "But not alone, and not on her terms." We arranged the meeting for the following week. My house, evening, Melissa, Carlisle, Alex, Rachel, and me. No grandchildren, no witnesses beyond our lawyers, just the people who'd been fighting this war from the beginning. She arrived at 7. The rain had returned, proper autumn weather that turned the driveway to mud and made the house feel like a fortress. Melissa looked different, thinner, older. The Polish was gone. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no jewelry, no makeup, just exhaustion and defeat. Carlisle walked beside her, carrying a briefcase that looked heavy. We gathered in the dining room. The table was set, but not with food. Just files, just documents, just the accumulated evidence of months of warfare. Melissa sat down across from me. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Thank you for seeing me," she said finally. "Alex thought you might be here to negotiate." "I am." She glanced at Carlisle. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a single document. "I'm prepared to sign a complete and permanent withdrawal of all claims to Daniel's estate, including future royalties, trademark rights, and any other intellectual property." "We already have that. You signed it 7 years ago." "This goes further. This acknowledges the validity of the transfer to you. This states publicly that Daniel made his choices of sound mind and free will. This apologizes for the affidavits and retracts them formally." She slid the paper across the table. I read it. It was comprehensive, legally binding. Everything I'd wanted. "What do you want in return?" I asked. "For you to stop." "Stop what?" "The investigation, the press leaks, the systematic destruction of everything I have left. Her voice cracked. I know I can't win. I know I was wrong. I just want it to end. I'm not controlling the district attorney's investigation. But you could influence it. You have connections, resources. You could make this go away. Why would I do that? She looked down at her hands. Because your grandchildren are losing their mother. Because Connor has withdrawn from school to try to support me. Because Eliza cries herself to sleep every night. Because whether you believe it or not, I did love Daniel. I was weak and stupid. And I can't undo that. But I'm begging you not to take everything. It was the closest thing to genuine emotion I'd seen from her, and it didn't move me. You came to his funeral for money, I said. You filed false affidavits using my grandchildren. You conspired with Brennan to manipulate the market. And now you want mercy? I don't deserve it, she said. But they do. Connor and Eliza. They deserve a chance to have a mother who isn't in prison. They deserve a mother who doesn't lie to them. I know. She looked up. Tears were streaming down her face now, real ones as far as I could tell. I know what I did. I know what I am, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me. For them. I looked at the document, then at Alex. Is this legally sound? I asked. Yes. If she signs it, you'll have complete and permanent control of the estate. No future challenges. No questions. And if I agree to discourage the investigation, that's between you and your conscience. I stood up, walked to the window, watched the rain streak down the glass. Behind me, Melissa was crying quietly. Carlisle was whispering something to her. Rachel sat silent, watching me. I thought about Daniel, about his face in the hospital, about his voice when he'd asked me to protect the patents. Dad, he'd said, don't let her take what I built. Promise me. I'd promised, and I'd kept that promise. The patents were safe, the estate was secure, everything he'd wanted was protected. But at what cost? I turned back to the table. I'll sign your agreement, I said, on 3 conditions. Anything, Melissa said quickly. First, you never use the Reed name for any business purpose. Ever. You can't trade on Daniel's reputation. You can't claim association with his work. Agreed. Second, you stay away from me and Maggie. No contact except through attorneys regarding the kids. Agreed. Third, you tell Connor and Eliza the truth. All of it. The conspiracy with Brennan, the attempt to steal the patents during your marriage, the false affidavits, everything. No more lies. She went pale. They'll hate me. Maybe. But they'll hate the truth less than they'll hate discovering it later. You want them to keep their mother? Then be honest with them for once in your life. She looked at Carlisle. He nodded slightly. All right, she whispered. I'll tell them. Alex produced a pen. Melissa signed the document. Then I signed it. Carlisle witnessed. It was done. The investigation? She asked. I'll make a call, I said. I can't promise anything, but I'll try to convince Shaw that pursuing charges isn't in the public interest. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Connor and Eliza. And because my wife is right, I've become someone I don't like very much. Melissa stood. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but there wasn't anything left to say. Carlisle gathered his documents. They left together, walking out into the rain. Rachel waited until they were gone. Then she said, "That was decent of you." Was it? Or was it just exhaustion? Does it matter? I don't know. I called Shaw that night, told him Melissa had signed a complete settlement, told him I believed pursuing criminal charges would hurt my grandchildren more than it would serve justice. He listened, then said, "I'll take it under advisement. But the case against Brennan stands. He hurt a lot of investors. That's not something I can overlook just because you're feeling charitable." I understand. And I did. Brennan had made his choices. Let him face the consequences. Maggie came home 2 days later. She walked in without calling first, like she was testing whether this was still her house. I was in the study, staring at the patent documents spread across my desk. "You called Shaw," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you were right. I'd gone too far." She sat down in the chair across from me. "What did Melissa agree to?" I told her about the settlement, the complete withdrawal, the promise to tell the kids the truth. "And you're satisfied with that?" she asked. "No, but I'm done. I promised Daniel I'd protect what he built. I did that. The rest was just revenge, and it was destroying me." "Us," she said quietly. "It was destroying us." "I know." We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "Connor called me this morning. Melissa told them everything. He said Eliza screamed at her for an hour. He just went quiet." "How are they?" "Broken, but honest broken, not confused broken. That's something." "It's not enough." "No, but it's a start." She reached across the desk and took my hand. "I'm not saying what you did was right, but I understand why you did it, and I'm willing to try to find our way back, if you are." "I am." And I meant it. Not because I regretted bringing Melissa down. I didn't. She'd earned every consequence she faced. But because I'd learned something about revenge. It doesn't heal anything. It just leaves you standing in the wreckage, wondering who you've become. 2 weeks later, Rachel called. "The DA dropped charges against Melissa. Insufficient evidence for conviction, public statement says, but we both know the real reason." "And Brennan?" "Indicted on 12 counts of securities fraud. Trial set for next spring. He's facing serious time." "Good." "Is it? Good?" I thought about it. Yes, because he didn't do what he did out of desperation or love or weakness. He did it out of greed, cold, calculated greed. That deserves punishment. And Melissa's greed, her calculation, was wrapped up in desperation and fear. I'm not excusing it. But I understand it now. Understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. It just means I can let it go. Can you let it go? I'm trying. Connor and Eliza came to visit the following weekend. It was awkward. They didn't know how to talk to me anymore, didn't know if I was grandfather or executioner. We had dinner. Maggie made pot roast, Daniel's favorite. We talked about small things, weather, school, anything but the obvious. Finally, Connor said, "Mom told us you agreed to stop the investigation." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you and your sister shouldn't have to pay for her mistakes. You've lost enough already." Eliza looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Do you hate her?" "No," I said, and realized it was true. I hate what she did, but I don't hate her. Hate takes too much energy. I'd rather spend that energy on the people I love. "Did you love Dad?" Connor asked. "Every day of his life." "Then why did he end up alone? Why did he end up broke and sick and dying without any of us there?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "Because," I said carefully, "sometimes the people we love make choices that push us away, and sometimes we make choices that push them away. Your father and I, we did our best. But our best wasn't always good enough. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was honest. And sometimes honest is all you can offer." They left after dinner. Maggie walked them to their car. I watched from the window, seeing my wife hug my grandchildren, seeing them hold on to her like she was the only solid thing left in their world. When she came back inside, her cheeks were wet. "They're going to be okay," she said. "Eventually." "How do you know?" "Because they're Reed kids. We're stubborn. We survive." She was right. 3 months passed, then 6. Life began to resemble something normal. Connor went back to school. Eliza started therapy. Melissa got a job at a small firm, far from her previous industry, starting over. Brennan's trial happened in the spring. He was convicted on 9 counts, 22 years. He'd be an old man when he got out, if he got out. I watched the verdict on the news, felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a sense of completion. The patents continued to generate revenue. I set up trust funds for Connor and Eliza, made sure they'd be taken care of regardless of what happened with their mother. And I tried to remember who I'd been before the funeral, before the rain and the rage and the systematic destruction. It wasn't easy. You can't undo the things you've done, can't unsay the words, can't unthink the thoughts, but you can choose what you do next. And I chose to rebuild, not bridges this time, something harder, something more important, the relationships I'd damaged, the parts of myself I'd sacrificed, the trust I'd broken with my wife and grandchildren, one day at a time, one conversation, one small kindness. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't cinematic, but it was real, and it was enough.